Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So this is a really big piece of news. There's just one thing, and as you can see on screen here, we have the kind of reveal announcement of a AAA Avatar video game. So this is something we've been waiting for a very long time. It says in the article here that this is meant to be the biggest video game in franchise history, and based on the very early information that we have here, it very much looks to be that. I think it's difficult to get like exceptionally excited about this news because there's no visuals associated with this. There's vague kind of broad details, but nothing specific like in any way. And because I think of where we are in terms of like waiting for Avatar Studios content, this is everything that Avatar Studios has been. Broad, vague, no specifics. It'll be happening at some point in the future, years from now, not anytime soon. So it's difficult to get excited like right now when Avatar Studios, which was announced in 2021, still hasn't really shown off anything in terms of the animated content. And then this video game, which is announced today, when are we actually going to see something from this is the big problem. But let's go through the article here because there are some details to point out. So IGN get the exclusive on this. They clearly seem to be basing the article off either some sort of an interview or I'm guessing a press release that was put out, but because they get the exclusive, they're not putting out the press release. I'm guessing there'll be more information on this in the coming days because we know the podcast has some Avatar video game news coming up, Braving the Elements. So I'm assuming the next episode probably relates to this announcement, is probably what was being alluded to. So I'm wondering, will that have any more information beyond this? But we have to wait and see what exactly is going to happen there on that. So yeah, they get to exclusively reveal that Avatar is getting its first AAA game. So we see that this is coming from Paramount Game Studios as well as Saber Interactive, who if you follow video games, most recently they just in the last month and a bit put out Space Marine 2, the most recent Warhammer game, which has been received very well. I've played it, I really like it, and from an IP perspective it did a very good job at representing the Warhammer IP, so I'm confident in them from that regard. So yeah, they've announced a new, and it's an action RPG game. Okay, noticeably they don't mention open world here in terms of like how exploration focused necessarily this is going to be. They constantly mention world building throughout this, but don't quite get the full scale maybe of the game across here as such. So action RPG. The RPG mention is definitely kind of good to know in terms of like, okay, upgrading elements and you're going to be playing as an avatar. That's exciting. And they're saying that's going to be based in the Avatar Legends universe, which is basically just, this is the Avatar franchise kind of animated continuity. Avatar Legends is just what they seem to call the franchise because they don't want to just call the overall franchise Avatar The Last Airbender, because in most eras of Avatar, there are airbenders. It's only the kind of 100-Year War era and, you know, early stages of the Aang era where, you know, there is only one airbender. So calling the entire franchise that doesn't make the most sense. So Avatar Legends is what they've went with for a variety of things, including like the RPG is called this because it's also multi-generational, and I'm guessing that's what they're calling this here because it's going to effectively be introducing its own era onto the timeline set thousands of years ago, as we'll get into here. So yeah, they just go over Avatar The Last Airbender. It's in collaboration with Avatar Studios, and they do roughly mention the idea of expanding the Avatar universe. For context on this, if you maybe aren't familiar with Avatar Studios, the plan, as far as we know right now, Avatar Studios are going to be making a variety of animated movies and series in the coming future. The first project is the Avatar Aang movie when the team is adults, and that's coming, as far as we know right now, January 2026. Not a ton of details on that, but they have announced some voice actors and stuff like that, but we're still waiting for a full real announcement where there's like full visuals and stuff like that. Also, we will be expecting the first animated series from Avatar Studios to also hit probably in 2026 as well, and that is heavily rumored, borderline confirmed to be about the Earth Avatar after Korra. That's going to be the first series as far as we're aware. Again, a lot of it's up in the air and rather vague, sort of like this announcement about this game. Still exciting, but there's not a lot of concrete details. Now, they say it's still in early development, and this is the only mention of anything that actually relates to sort of like, well, when are we going to see it? When are we actually going to get anything about it? Well, it's in early development, so probably not for quite a while. And in relation to Avatar Studios, obviously 2026 is the year when we expect stuff to properly happen. So I would say 2026 is probably the earliest we would expect to see this game. So not this year, probably not next year either. But in terms of release, the earliest is probably 2026. And then I'm not even sure about that, because obviously video games take continuously kind of longer and longer to make as we kind of go forward, it seems like. They note the details are slim at the moment as well, but it's called by Paramount and Saber the biggest video game in franchise history. And it's going to be for PC and consoles. Makes complete sense. It will tell a new story in the universe, and it's being developed in close collaboration with Avatar Studios. The announcement notes. Now, it should be noted here that they have the exclusive for this announcement, but they're clearly reading off some sort of a more public announcement. So I hope they do release whatever that kind of press release is at some point so we can read it off ourselves and maybe pick out if there maybe is anything they didn't highlight in this article. But anyway, it'll put players in the role of an all-new, never-before-seen Avatar and take place thousands of years in the past. Now, the new never-before-seen Avatar makes complete sense because, as far as we're aware, like, you know, there's probably 100+ avatars that we know absolutely nothing about. The Avatar has like a 10,000 year history in the franchise, and we know of literally a handful of them. So many of them we know nothing about. We have names for a few avatars that we know very few details about. But the detail that's probably more significant here is the fact that it is going to be taking place thousands of years in the past. So it's cool already that the main character, I guess, of this game is going to be a new avatar. I'm so happy that they're doing a big Avatar video game project, and it's not just an ATLA game. You're playing as Aang. I think it's been long enough now with the franchise that we need to do something like this and do something new, tell a new story, and, you know, deal with the world in a slightly different state. And probably for the big thing for like a game, of course, you don't want to set it in the Aang era because it doesn't allow you to really do much with the air nomads. Whereas if you do it in the past, the air nomads are still around. The air temples are full, so you can actually do stuff with one of the four nations, and I think that's a big reason why they, I think, would want to do this, really make it sort of Avatar kind of classical, kind of as people would expect it to be. Now, when it comes to thousands of years in the past, obviously that means at least 2,000 years from Korra. We don't even know what that era is, because if you track all the avatars back, and it's like Korra, Aang, Roku, Kyoshi, Karuk, Yang Chen, Avatar Zito, and then even if you add in the likes of Avatar Salai, Avatar Gun, we're still not quite into almost like 1,000 years into the past. Adding that up, given that like we don't know the exact ages of a lot of those avatars either, we're certainly not 2,000 years into the past, so we're well beyond kind of present day backwards. And then there's a giant gap, of course, to like Avatar 1, with the only real Avatar that we know in the gap period from Avatar 1 to say, like, you know, Avatar like Zito, Gun, Salai being Avatar Zalir, who we recently learned about in the new Roku novel, who is a pre-Four Nations avatar. Now, what that means, and that might be interesting for the context of this game, because they kind of highlight that there's going to be some interesting world-building stuff in this game, is sort of what is the status of the world going to be. Because if we set this, say, 4,000 years before Korra, we are suddenly in an era that is technically considered pre-Four Nations, like the Fire Nation water tribes, the Earth Kingdom, and the air kind of nomads in their air temples. They are not fully locked in as that is the state of the world. Now, as far as we're aware, the reasoning behind why they wouldn't be the official Four Nations is because in the history of the Fire Nation, for instance, they only became the Fire Nation once the first Fire Lord united the various Fire Islands into a nation. So that might have been the kind of last of the Four Nations to properly become a nation. There's also the fact that the Water Tribes, we know the Southern Tribe formed from the Northern Tribe, so that means there was pretty large periods of the timeline where the Water Tribe only was the Northern Water Tribe. So depending on where they set this, there could be some pretty big world building kind of situations kind of like that kind of going on. Sort of same you might say for the Earth Kingdom in terms of like, Ba Sing Se didn't always have the walls. It used to be an underground city. Omashu has always been more of a kind of historical kind of capital in a way almost of the Earth Kingdom, even though Ba Sing Se is what we know of as the capital. All these sort of stuff is super interesting, and it just highlights that, we could go ancient kind of more time period in terms of like maybe the second Avatar and have it be more like Wan's kind of beginning time period where it's really early proto-nations. We could go more, say, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, and it's maybe early days of the Four Nations, or they've been around for a little bit, but it's mostly what we know of, but just disconnected from the really obvious kind of political kind of undertones that we know of from the well kind of covered eras. There's a lot of room to work with the Avatar franchise because we have this kind of set in stone, like we've got 10,000 years of stuff to work with when it comes to the story of the Avatar. So this is super interesting. Definitely the most interesting detail I think from the article is just that we're going to be playing as a new Avatar thousands of years ago. Very cool. But what that means is very broad, very, very broad, because we could be playing in something that maybe is somewhat reminiscent of, say, like the Yang Chen era from the Yang Chen books, but we also could be playing in something that's more like Wan's era, just shortly after his time. That's interesting. They say players can expect to be immersed in a vibrant world, master all four elements, engage in dynamic combat alongside companions, and experience the challenges and decisions that come with being the keeper of balance in the world. So, okay, they're highlighting the world here, but just that it's vibrant. Does that mean you really get to properly explore it, like all Four Nations, or is there set levels? I would like to know that. Okay, we're the Avatar, we can master all four elements, it's an RPG, we expect there to be like skill trees and learning abilities and levels and stuff like that, I guess. Dynamic combat, okay, it's an action RPG, so that's gonna explain that side of things. You will have companions. And obviously, I'm guessing it's a story-driven game, so I kind of wonder, like, is that a set team avatar that you gain over the course of a story? Or is it going to be more open world, and you really get to choose from a kind of pretty large cast of characters who your team avatar is? That could be quite interesting. Is it set or much more open? Experience the challenges and decisions that come with being the keeper of balance in the world. So that would suggest maybe some decision tree type stuff that you actually do get to maybe do some negotiating. You get to decide if you maybe want to handle things by fighting in a certain situation or more negotiated out. That could be quite interesting. Story-wise, it'll feature elements both new and familiar to fans of the franchise, which makes sense. Like, they're never going to make an Avatar game where it's just completely alien. There's always going to be a sense that we know something, like that Ba Sing Se is over here. We know where the Earth Kingdom is. We know where the Water Tribes are. Fire Nation is. Even if it's in eras before they're fully set in stone, they're still roughly those locations, that sort of idea. And I think that's just probably what they're highlighting here, maybe suggesting that it probably isn't maybe super far into the past. Like, we're not maybe talking like 8,000 years ago. If it's thousands of years ago, maybe we are dealing more with 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years ago. Still quite a far away, but the world is more recognizable perhaps than we maybe would expect it to be from a Wan kind of era. So that makes complete sense. They want it to be recognizable but still be new. Makes complete sense. We know fans have been eager for more stories, basically, in the gaming landscape. We're able to expand the world building. That's an interesting little detail there. So they're really emphasizing the world building, which to me would maybe suggest that the game is planned to be quite substantial in terms of how much of the world is shown off. But, you know, how much can we read into it? It's very hard to say. Allow fans to experience the new content in a completely immersive way. So you're really going to get to be in these kind of new locations, I guess, or whatever. Saber Interactive has a proven track record in bringing IP-based games to life, and we're excited to co-fund this AAA title alongside them and let fans experience the world firsthand. So they mentioned this, both sides mentioned the kind of co-funding of this, that Saber is working on it, but it's basically, you know, partly funded by Paramount Gaming, which really speaks to the kind of investment and confidence Paramount is putting into Avatar Studios and the multiple animated projects. And now, after a lot of kind of uncertainty when it comes to that sort of things, we're getting this like an announcement of a AAA game. And we know how big the budgets of AAA games are and how long and expensive they are to make. So we have to assume that this is a pretty large kind of funding thing here to make this game as good as it needs to be to kind of meet the expectations that are here for finally a AAA Avatar game. So it's nice to get something like this to just highlight that Paramount have not lost their interest in Avatar. They seem full on in that this is one of their best franchises, and they want to commit to doing it in all avenues, animation and in the video game space here. Saber's quote is they're truly fans of the IP that they work with, they're devoted, passionate creatives, and it's an honor to join forces with Avatar Studios and Paramount Games to further expand the Avatar Legends universe in video games, which very PR statement there, I maybe like that statement to just be a little bit more kind of like conversational or something like that. We're going to expand the Avatar Legends universe. Okay. This unique co-fund structure is a result of our ever-expanding collaboration with Paramount. Okay. And then they just quickly mentioned that Avatar does have a mixed history with video games, with, of course, the Korra video game being the best. Maybe one of the 3DS games. I think the last one was pretty decent, the Chibi one. But beyond that, we've not had a big-scale game, and that's good as well, that sort of idea. Korra game is the thing to beat, and realistically that should be beatable if the amount of effort that we think is going to be put into this is actually put into this. There is, of course, another game, this is what they're referred to here, this fighting game that's going to be coming out at some point from Maximum Entertainment, and again, I don't think we've heard anything about that since its vague initial announcement. So it's just, once again, kind of wrapping it up here. Some cool stuff in this, in terms of, I think, the broad idea of what this game is. It's like, yeah, 2 thumbs up from me. This sounds very exciting, but it's hard to get super excited when there's absolutely no proper details to delve into here, beyond just, well, thousands of years, where in the lore is this going to be set? And even then, that's a hard one to do, because there's so many gaps they could slot this into, wide open sections of the timeline to deal with. So yeah, very cool. Adds to the idea that there is still giant plans for Avatar going forward. We just need to see more details about everything across the board. I think a lot of us are very tired of waiting, and just this idea of, here's an announcement, come back to this in like 2 to 3 years. Maybe there'll be something then. We need to finally start to get some details on this stuff. And I hope in terms of the animated projects, we can learn about stuff soon. And then even this video game, like, this will be 10 times more exciting if they showed off like who this character is, who the Avatar is. Just gave a little bit more concrete idea about what exactly is kind of going on here. How broad in scope is this? How much of the world are we actually going to get to see? Hard to say from what is presented here, but in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. AAA Avatar video game coming from Saber Interactive. Are you excited for this? And When do you think we'll hear more about it? All those sort of things. Let me know in the comments below. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.